What is up, guys? Delboy here. So, I'm going to do a post-fight review for Anthony Joshua versus Carlos Takam. I will also mention the Dillian Whyte fight at the end of this video as well. So, Anthony Joshua versus Carlos Takam. I have to say, the fight didn't really go the way I expected. I felt Joshua would solve the Carlos Takam puzzle a bit quicker than he did. It dragged on to the 10th round. I personally felt he'd get him out of there in sort of the 6th round or something like that, and I didn't expect it to drag on quite the way it did. That's not saying it was a bad performance, but I just expected Joshua to solve the puzzle quicker. In my prediction video, I'm not surprised the way Takam fought though. I'm not surprised he fought like he did and he had some success. In the prediction video I did mention that Carlos Takam is quite well rounded. He can fight on the inside. He can box on the outside. He's got long arms. I mentioned that he does roll and slip with punches extremely well. He comes with a side-on profile when he's on the outside, which makes it hard to land. He'll come on with a side-on profile where he'll sort of tuck his chin, raise his shoulder, and it's almost like a shell, it's almost like a Philly shell. And he is quite defensively sound, you know. And it didn't surprise me the way he fought, or even the fact that he caused Joshua some problems. Just like I said, I just expected Joshua to solve a puzzle a bit quicker. Let's talk about the fight quickly. The fight opens up. Obviously, the first round was the first round. It was what it was. Joshua was on the front foot. Carlos Takam on the back foot. It actually set the tone for the rest of the fight, really. But Joshua was the guy who was trying to impose his will in trying to force the pace. Carlos Takam was just sort of backing off, giving him some looks, looking for sort of counters. And Joshua was the more aggressive guy in round one. He won the round. Round two, this was one of the more interesting parts of the fight, actually. Joshua again is in control. Then he's actually caught with a head clash. Basically, Carlos Takam, obviously he's a small fighter for heavyweight. He was coming in low and he came up with his head and he butted Anthony Joshua in the nose. Looked like it broke his nose. There's a lot of blood, and that was an interesting moment because it showed us how Anthony Joshua reacted to that. And when it initially happened, when the blood was gathering, Joshua looked a little bit panicked. He didn't look like David Price panicky, but he looked like he could feel it and he knew that it could be a problem, and he could see that. But he saw out the round. He won the round still. He saw out the round and he got back to his corner. And after that, to his credit, he just soldiered on and it didn't really bother him. One thing I felt, the question it raised in my mind was, how is this broken nose and bloody nose going to affect Anthony Joshua's breathing? And then, following on from that, how is it going to affect his stamina? Because Anthony Joshua does have question marks over his stamina, and I think those question marks are justified, to be quite honest. Especially with the added weight, because this was the heaviest Joshua has ever been. And to me, it was very noticeable. I personally feel Joshua should be around 240, 242. He needs to take some weight off. He needs to take a good 10, 12 pounds off. The sort of weight he was when he was fighting Charles Martin and Dominic Brazil, that's the type of weight I think Joshua should be fighting at. That sort of weight, around 240. Because he looked a lot quicker then. And to me, in the last two fights, he has been noticeably slower. He was tonight, or last night, sorry, was the slowest I've ever seen Joshua. And Carlos Takam is not a quick guy. So it's not the illusion that he's fighting a quick guy and that's making him look slow. No, Carlos Takam is not quick. And Joshua looked very slow in my opinion. And he looked slow against Vladimir Klitschko. And again, I know Klitschko is quite quick. But I know what I saw. Joshua was not as quick as he was in, for example, like I said, the Brazil fight or the Charles Martin fight. And you can see through his career, I think Joshua has got slower and slower and slower as he's put more weight on. And I don't think that's going to serve him well. I really don't. In the long run, that is. So, to me personally, Joshua, the biggest takeaway from this fight is, it should be, that Joshua needs to lose a bit of weight. Lose 10 pounds, lose 12 pounds, and I'm sure he'll be quicker. And maybe it might even make his stamina a bit better, because obviously the more muscle you carry, chances are it's going to make it harder for you as the fight goes on. But yeah, the second round he saw out the broken nose. Third round again he was on top. Fourth round was the round he had a lot of success. He hurt Takam. He dropped him with a flash knockdown, caught him some big shots, and I think it was the fourth round where Takam got the cut eye, and he was looking in distress. It almost looked at one point like he wanted to pull out, but to his credit, he dug deep and fought on. Basically from round 5 to round 10, it was pretty much all Joshua. Carlos Takam was having moments. He was still catching Joshua with some sneaky right hands, a couple of left hooks. Also, one thing I did notice as well, from round 5 onwards, Carlos Takam was getting on the inside a bit more, and he did have success to the body. And I feel that was one area where Carlos Takam should have done more. He should have done more on the inside. I did say in my prediction video that I felt Carlos Takam was a very good inside fighter. The bodywork is very good. And when Carlos Takam got on the inside, when he threw a few body shots, I felt Joshua, it affected him. I'm not saying it hurt him, but he felt them. And if Carlos Takam was a bit more active to the body, would have been interesting. I think that's one of the areas where he could have done better, and maybe analysing it, he might realise that, he might think to himself, I wish I did let more body shots go, because as I said, Joshua's stamina is questionable, especially at his highest weight he's ever been at. So maybe that is an area where Takam could have done better. But Takam was having success. He was always second best, but he was having success. I actually didn't give him a round, to be quite honest. I'm not sure how you can give him a round, but he done better than I expected. He took it longer than I expected. On to the 10th round, the stoppage. He was caught with some big shots. He was caught with a big uppercut, I believe. Nice right hand to follow. He done a little bit of a dance. He was hurt. Joshua sort of followed them across the ring, let his hands go. A lot of shots were missing. He caught him with a couple, and the referee jumps in and stops it. I personally feel that it was a very early stoppage, and it was a poor stoppage, to be quite honest. Carlos Takam proved that he's an extremely tough man. He was still live in the fight. He was still making Joshua miss when he was hurt. He was still throwing back. And listen, I just feel it was a really bad stoppage, and the crowd let the referee know that. They booed the stoppage, and rightly so. I felt it was a terrible stoppage, and it took a gloss off the win for Anthony Joshua. But ultimately, it doesn't change the fact that Carlos Takam was second best throughout the fight. Now, on to my thoughts about his performance. How do I grade it? Firstly, I've said this on this channel a few times. Boxing fans are very, very, very reactionary. I mean, you got to put things in perspective when you're talking about boxing and about anything in life, really. But Carlos Takam's a guy who has fought world level fighters before. The best two guys he's fought, other than Joshua, are Joseph Parker and Alexander Povetkin. Carlos Takam took multiple rounds off Joseph Parker. He took multiple rounds off Povetkin. He took, at best, one round off Anthony Joshua. I personally feel Joshua done the best job on Carlos Takam so far. So, to say it's a bad performance would be a bit harsh in my opinion. I personally felt it was a solid 7 out of 10 performance. There are things he was doing well, but there's a lot he needed to improve on. Like I said, a lot of it with Joshua to me is the weight. He looked a hell of a lot crisper when he was lighter. He looked so much crisper. The right hand counter, he was just quicker. And I think that's one of the big things in this fight. The speed factor for Joshua wasn't there. He looked very cumbersome. He was pushing with his punches at times. My biggest issue with the performance was the physical side of things. Like I said, he was still getting caught. He was still getting hit. He does need to tighten up. But was it the worst performance in the world? No. Was it a great performance? No. It was a run-of-the-mill title defense type performance. Could do better. Could do worse. It was what it was, man. I think people sometimes are a little bit too harsh when critiquing these fighters. It's not like he lost 4 rounds, or do you know what I mean? He didn't lose really any rounds, in my opinion. So you got to put it in perspective. Does Joshua have weaknesses? Yes. I think Joshua's weaknesses have always been apparent. I really do. But some people, when they see a fighter go a few rounds, when they see a fighter given a few sort of awkward moments, that's when they say, oh, he's been exposed. Listen, the Joshua weaknesses have always been there. They've always been apparent. Stamina, the lack of head movement, the lack of feinting, the inconsistent jab, and slow feet. Although the slow feet one, again, is partly because of his bulk. A few fights back, he was much quicker on his feet. But right now, he's looking slow. So if Joshua needs to improve, he cannot afford to get any heavier, I'll tell you that much. Can't afford to get any heavier. I would love to see him lose a bit of weight. But we'll see what happens with that one. Let's also talk about Dillian Whyte versus Robert Helenius. I have to say, this fight disappointed me a bit. I expected Robert Helenius to go in that ring with something to prove. And in the first 2 rounds, to his credit, that looked like the case. In the second round, he caught Dillian Whyte with, I think, like a left hand, like a left hook. And it caught Dillian Whyte off guard. And I think it buzzed him a bit. His eyes looked glazed over, and he looked a little bit shaken. He wasn't like badly hurt, but he definitely felt it. And that was interesting. At that point, I felt, Jesus Christ, are we going to be in for a firefight here? Is Dillian Whyte going to get upset? But after the second round, Helenius just kind of went in his shell, fought on the back foot, and Dillian Whyte was sort of trudging forward, trying to look for body shots, trying to look for overhand rights, trying to look for left hooks. And it was a really sloppy fight. Dillian Whyte was basically winning all the rounds after round 2, and he was very inaccurate. He was very wild. He was missing with the left hook badly. There was times when he threw the left hook and he almost sort of threw himself off balance. He was missing a right hand by quite some distance. So that's a bit of a concern. To me, Dillian Whyte has always been a guy who has been inaccurate. Some of his punch technique is pretty poor, the way he loads up. He's almost like Derek Chisora in that sense, you know. And the technical side of Dillian Whyte's game still needs to improve a hell of a lot. And I have to say, I'm not sure Dillian Whyte's technical skills have improved that much since the Anthony Joshua fight. I'm really not sure. I don't think they've improved that much. To his credit, you know, one thing that Dillian has improved on is his stamina. He was basically throwing non-stop in that fight. He was throwing a lot of body shots. He was missing as well, which is tiring. To Dillian's credit, he has got very good stamina. He's got a good engine. He's got a good chin. He's got an iron will. So he has got things going for him. I just feel technically Dillian Whyte needs to improve a hell of a lot. He lunges in with punches quite a lot. Even with a jab, if you see him throw a jab, he'll lunge in with it, and then he'll come across with that right hand. And sometimes he'll throw himself off balance, and he's trying to fight Deontay Wilder. If he does something like that against Deontay Wilder, chances are it's going to wind up him getting knocked out. Because if you lunge in against Deontay Wilder, and if he catches you, you're getting knocked out. Wilder, to me, again, is very raw. He's very vulnerable, and he is very gangly at times. But one thing Wilder does well, that not many people actually really give him credit for, is his timing. I think Wilder has good timing when he sort of sets himself. It's only when Wilder puts his hands together and when he lets his shots go, that's when Wilder looks clumsy. But his actual sort of timing and his distance game is okay. His distance game is okay, but his timing is really good. And Dillian cannot fight like that against Deontay Wilder. To me, Dillian's aggression is not the issue. It's the way he lunges in. If I was Dillian Whyte, I would fight Deontay Wilder with a high guard, try to walk Deontay down and go to the body, try and get up close and go to the body. If he fights like he's fighting now, lunging in with that right hand, throwing himself off balance with that left hook, he is going to get slept in a bad way. I feel Dillian Whyte needs to look at somebody like Winky Wright, look at that high guard and try to walk Deontay Wilder down. That's how I think Dillian Whyte needs to approach the Wilder fight. He has the natural aggression, but he needs to be more cerebral. He needs to be more defensively sound, because right now he is open for right hands. He's basically open for every punch under the sun, to be quite honest. Dillian Whyte needs to improve defensively for Deontay Wilder. He really does. Having said all that, I do think Dillian Whyte does things that could trouble Deontay Wilder. I think if you let your hands go against Deontay Wilder, yeah, you could get knocked out. But to me, he doesn't look great under pressure, Wilder. I don't think Wilder is a natural fighter at all. I think he's a great athlete, but I don't think he's a natural fighter. There's question marks over Deontay Wilder's chin. There's question marks over Deontay Wilder full stop. I don't think it's going to take a great fighter to beat Deontay Wilder, but it's if he lands that one shot. To me, that's all Deontay Wilder is, and that's all he ever has been, is speed and power. Because the boxing ability, apart from timing, isn't there. It's really not there. So, of course, Dillian Whyte can give Wilder problems. The reality is, if Eric Molina's giving you trouble, if Johan Durpar's giving you trouble, then Dillian Whyte is probably going to give you some issues. That's the reality. And it's just the fact that Dillian Whyte is not... He's not well-rounded enough. He's not defensively sound enough. And against Deontay Wilder, making just one mistake could be your downfall. And Dillian Whyte makes a hell of a lot of mistakes. So, in my opinion, chances are he gets knocked out against Deontay Wilder. I would actually still like to see the fight, though. I think it's a good fight. You know, it's going to be entertaining. Both guys are going to be talking smack. Dillian is going to come to fight regardless of what I just said. You know, all of those criticisms about his technique. He'll come to fight, that's one thing for sure. And he's not going to lie down. So that in itself could cause Deontay Wilder some issues, you know. But yeah, it wasn't a great card, I have to say. I watched it with casuals, and they also felt the stoppage was way too early. And they know nothing about boxing, so that tells you all you need to know. But regardless of that, where does Joshua go next? Well, me personally, I would like to see him against the Deontay Wilder versus Bermane winner. Now, we're presuming that Deontay Wilder's going to win that fight, which he's got to do first, but let's say he wins a fight. I would like to see Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder. That's a great fight. Two guys with big power, two big guys. Should make for a great fight. And failing that, Anthony Joshua versus Joseph Parker is another good fight. I'm happy with that one. I would like to see Wilder or Parker next. That's what I would like to see. What do you guys think? Where do you want to see Joshua go next? Eddie Hearn also mentioned about the WBA mandatory situation. So he was saying that Alexander Povetkin versus Christian Hammer could be a WBA eliminator. I thought that was going to be a WBO eliminator. But Povetkin should win that fight. Joshua versus Povetkin's a great fight. I would love to see Joshua versus Povetkin. And I know a few people are going to say, well, Povetkin's a drug cheat. Well, yeah, he is. But the reality is, he's an active fighter, so you have to talk about him. I believe he's ranked in the WBA, so you do have to talk about him as a potential opponent. So if Povetkin does become mandatory, I would like to see Joshua versus Povetkin. But what do you guys think? Where do you think Joshua's going next? Who do you think he should fight next? Share your thoughts below. Peace.